Are you listening?
This is the Rob Scott Show.
Damn.
I mean, really, like, if we're not trying to change the world, what are we doing?
Yeah.
All right, here we are. Welcome.
Welcome back to the Rob Scott Show.
What's up, Sarah?
Not much. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited about this talk.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so today, I think we want to share one of the things that is super important to people who are feeling stuck, somebody who's overwhelmed, procrastinating, dealing with self-sabotage, etc. There is almost like a universal key to shifting all that for yourself. And today I want to explain what that is. And once you shift it, what can happen is you actually can fall into a deep sense of confidence, sleeping really well, being really productive, shifting kind of all the stuff that we want to shift. There is a central limiting structure of the brain, if you will. And I want to go through that today. Does that sound good?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Nice. So it's kind of a trigger word for people because it has a lot of meaning that's associated with it already. And what we're going to be talking about is kind of the mechanism of belief in our brain. And so I think the first thing we should probably do is define what I mean by belief, right?
Yeah,
because
definitely.
I think immediately a lot of people, maybe not most people, and it might be most people, at first associate that with religious belief, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to equate it with religious belief, although that falls into what belief is, but belief is so much wider than that. And so if we really simplify it down, I think a great definition of belief to start as a jumping off point is just this. It's an assuredness of meaning. So whether or not something is true, we end up knowing that it is true in our own experience, right? So we watch something happen. I often use the example of like your boss looks down the hall at you and they give you a funny look, and we assign that meaning. And the degree to which we believe that can really get us stuck, right? If it's an accurate belief, if it is true and we happen to believe it, which beliefs can be true, that's totally fine. But the difference between truth and belief is something I want to go into here.
I could talk about that all day. So
yeah,
it's one of my favorite things to talk about.
Cool. Yeah. So, but this goes deep too. So why it's not just about religious beliefs again is this is like an everyday thing. Like, do you believe that chair will hold you up? And so you decide to sit on it, right? A lot of these beliefs are like under the thing and we're not consciously considering them. We're just sort of navigating our day. And so this goes into beliefs about ourselves. Am I good at sales? Am I attractive? Is it possible to lose weight? Can I make more money? How much money, right? The belief about yourself and what you deserve, and that will drive your salary. That'll drive unconsciously to you, almost your entire reality is driven by the meaning that you're making up. Now, it's also driven by outside factors, right? The world is also sometimes hitting you in the face with a tsunami. Sometimes something bad happens to your house, like there are bad actors in the world. All that's very real also, but way more so than what most people deal with in external challenges is what's going on internally and how they're set up in their meaning making.
Well, and if belief and thought are closely related, we've talked about how there's two levels of thought, the conscious thought and the unconscious thought. So
yeah.
As far as the meaning making, I'm sure there's conscious and unconscious beliefs. Maybe religious could lie in both, but maybe primarily is a conscious choice versus, what your self-worth is maybe lives a little bit deeper.
Yeah. And it's going to be, so let's just talk about religion for a second. Many people are consciously choosing their religion and they know they're doing it. And so a great deal of that lives in the conscious mind. Somebody who is brought up in a very strict religion that they've never really challenged or gone away from, much of that might be conscious also, but much of it might be unconscious, right? It might be just assumed realities about what happens after you die or what this kind of sin means or whatever that stuff is. And, I'm defaulting to a popular religion here in our country, which is, Christianity, but this goes for Islamic beliefs and Judaism and Buddhism and all the different isms out there, right? All those different isms. We'll get into isms later in more depth, I'm sure, but they're tightly wrapped to beliefs, right? So let's go back to this assuredness of meaning. What I believe something means is happening mostly outside my consciousness. I would say it's a process or an efficiency of the brain where we have to make meaning up all the time. What do these things out here mean to me? And so we have these inside biases, that
Mm-hmm.
that person who's purple is good or bad or whatever, right? This kind of work is good or bad. This kind of food is good or bad. This industry is good or bad. Capitalism is good or
I
bad.
was gonna say, what's the brand on it? Is it generic?
Exactly.
Is there a well-known brand on it? Okay, I'll drink that. I'll buy that.
Yeah.
I'll do that. Like it
Yeah.
just.
And so, Sarah, I'm curious, did you want to get into kind of trying to define truth in any way? Is that important?
I think for this episode, we should talk a little bit about what your definition or non-definition of truth is, just so we can distinguish. Because often I don't know if everyone can really pull apart the difference between a belief and a truth.
Yeah, for sure. So I think maybe let's, and I'm not trying to open a loop to a different episode or whatever, but let's say truth is a big one, right? Like what is truth? And I have what I think is a really cool way to start approaching that. And I hear in lots of other popular podcasts and great thinkers online really get lost in this, like, what is truth, right? What is that? And for this episode, let's just say that it's actually way more complex than you probably think. But because of your belief structure and the way that your mind makes meaning and makes assuredness of meaning to you, i.e. you believe things, you feel like you're looking at truth all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
actually digging at what is really true about yourself, about the world, objectively and subjectively, et cetera, that becomes a much more difficult thing. And science is one of the main sort of really successful studies of what's true through experiment and through things. And again, we can talk about this more later. But in your own life, you're not doing scientific experiments on everything to find truth. You're navigating what seems true to you. And ultimately, one of the biggest limits for us that hold us back is when our belief structures about ourselves, about the world, are wired inaccurately. And so things that can actually make you safe, cause you not to give that public talk, cause you not to start that business, cause you to do whatever, are beliefs about yourself that are maybe helping you survive, or they're under the guise of helping you survive in some way. But it ends up being incredibly limiting because you're believing something that's really not true. And so in that, you're actually living into a delusion deeply,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for this one, let's just say that truth is weird. And then let's map, I do want to talk about truth, opinion, and belief and how they're kind of what
I was going to
happens.
say, yeah, I think we can steer clear of the deep dive on truth and talk about opinion, because that's kind of a gateway.
Yeah, it
The
is.
gateway.
Yeah, opinion is the gateway drug over to beliefs, right? So I don't want to throw beliefs under the bus, right? Beliefs are super important. And if you can harness empowering beliefs, if you can harness beliefs that are useful to you and really install them, you can become superhuman in many ways. So I'm not even fully against delusion, which is weird, right? I'm a huge fan of truth. We're going to get back to that later. But if you're about to fight 6 guys and there's really no other place to go, having the belief that you can actually win that fight, there is an example that I could imagine where that would be useful, where you could actually have the confidence to fend them off long enough for police to arrive to actually save you. Sports figures who are professionals believing about themselves that they're literally the best in the world, whether or not that is true, could be really useful and could make them run harder or show up differently, right? So our belief affects us positively also, and certainly can. And so it's way more important to not just say we have to live directly to truth all the time, because that's going to be impossible, because we're often interpreting things where we can't know what's true in the moment, and we still have to be actors and move forward and do things. And so we have to go based on our beliefs. So I'm not totally anti-belief. However, I'm fairly anti-limiting belief. Right? I would really love us to sort of dig in and see what this mechanism of limits, like how that starts to happen, right? So if we say that truth is weird, and just, you're going to have to sort of trust me on that one. I'll prove that to you later, but truth is tricky. And maybe we can go a little bit into that, right? Truth is weird because, for one reason, we can't really see everything, right? We're looking from a limited perspective. Sometimes there's more data than we can take in to look at the real truth of something. Sometimes we've truly been lied to by an expert, and we end up believing things, and we just can't test it and know. Our own fear about not knowing what's true is a huge driver for us, though, and we're always trying to do that. So what we do is we actually decide to believe things instead. What's in between a belief and a truth, though, is an opinion. And so let's talk about how these are different. And I'm going to actually use an example that I used in a different podcast probably 13 years ago. And it's maybe the most horrible example. I was actually criticized, but I want to use it anyway because it's something I come back to. And if you have a better example, we can make up another one. But I want you to imagine that we're at the beginning of time and somebody goes out and they actually bump into a tree and it's painful. And so they take on the opinion that bumping into trees is bad. And let's say that they know that that's an opinion. They don't think it's true, but they just have the opinion that, you know what, this is bad. They may even go back to their village and teach people like, hey, I bumped into this tree, totally hurt my arm. Let's not bump into trees. Really, really bad, right? And people may take that on. And what happens, though, at some point is we actually take on that it becomes a truth, right? That we actually equate. There's an efficiency of the mind where we stop really knowing that it's an opinion, and somewhere along the way, it becomes a fact to us. Like, don't bump into trees. And maybe if they take that even further, it actually becomes like outlawed in their society. Like, anybody who bumps into trees is bad. And its original intention was good. It was like he just didn't want anybody to feel pain, but it got somehow misinterpreted in some way. And so we went from something that was an opinion, which tons of different cultures have different opinions. It leads to amazing differences in arts and all this kind of stuff, right? Like, opinions are important. You know, what you like and what I like, as long as we kind of let each other have those likes, it's really cool. But let's imagine this goes further and all of a sudden this opinion slips into a belief. We don't know that it's now a preference, but we actually take it as a truth. And it's so important that we actually have to like outlaw bumping into trees, let's say, right? Well, let's say we actually find 100 miles in another direction, there's a different tribe, and they actually train martial arts and they kick trees all the time to like develop their shin bones or whatever. And they bump it. They literally try to tackle trees to toughen themselves up. And they have a totally different opinion about quote unquote bumping into trees, totally different culture, right? That's totally great if they know that's an opinion, but let's say that they start making it important that everybody has to go through this ritual of bumping into trees. Well, you can imagine if we made this ridiculous example, like some countries out there today that have other beliefs, right? If they're both having different beliefs, when those cultures collide, that can lead to war, right? That can lead to like, what are you guys doing? You're not allowed to bump into trees versus like, you have to bump into trees. What's going on? So now we have to fight over our beliefs because we've let an opinion slip into a truth for us, right? And so we're doing this all the time. Like, our beliefs that we take on, if we don't learn, and what happens with beliefs with us is that we stop testing them like we might an opinion, right? If you bring to the party an opinion about something and it might not be right, but it's your preference, it's your thing, you can have a legitimate conversation about that that's valuable. You can grow. You may have your opinion changed. You may convince other people of your opinion. You might be really, really right. But the not knowing is a super important thing to remain able to grow, to do other things. But once an opinion has slipped into a belief, the belief that I'm talking about, not a belief that you're holding, which would actually be closer to an opinion.
An opinion, right.
But a belief that now is an assuredness of meaning. This is fact. This is true, right? Once that's happened, now you've locked in, and it would be called an attachment. It would be something that like, I'm not willing to give that up, because if you go against my belief, you're actually speaking a non-truth to me. And now here's what's weird. A belief and a truth literally are not the same thing. They can be the same. In a Venn diagram, They may have overlap. Your belief may be true, but a belief doesn't mean that it's true. What it means, and here's the error, it means that you think it's true, right? So once you actually believe something, whether it's about yourself or about a religion or about the world or about other people or about whatever, now it's got this special true status to you. And we will defend truth. And if people talk against that, they seem insane. Right? They seem like Looney Tunes. I can't get along with them. And this actually drives to, I would suggest, every bit of violence, every bit of warfare, every bit of whatever that's ever happened has been driven by beliefs being not aligned between people or cultures or countries, et cetera. And so if we can't start to explore our beliefs, especially our limiting ones, and we can't move that needle where appropriate back to opinions, right? If we can't start breaking up with some of our own beliefs, then we really just are what we are. And so if one of the goals of this show, specifically, but in the bigger context of the whole show that we keep doing here, is to help people wonderfully change and grow and become the next level of themselves, one of the deepest things that they have to be able to begin to do is see their beliefs, because many of them are unconscious, challenge the ones that aren't limiting to them, and ultimately really shift them. Because if you can shift that, just like if you took an opinion to a party and you learned something different and you grew, that's incredibly valuable, right? If you've got limiting beliefs that you're have on a protective status of unchangeable, true, permanent, never be able to go, you're shutting yourself down into a person that isn't going to be able to grow, isn't going to be able to get over your limits, isn't going to be able to go from I'm unattractive to like, I love how I look, right? Or I can never work out to like, wow, I can really affect my health and become active and do these things, right? These are the things that have to shift. And so this is some of the deepest work that I want to do on planet Earth with the individual. And then honestly, as we grow, our beliefs as a culture become super important too, because what we believe is valuable, what we believe is okay, is what we're seeing in our own country right now, causing a lot of dissent between different groups, between identity politics, between everything globally, between different countries. Again, as I mentioned, this is what leads to wars and fighting and all that stuff. And so if we can't societally kind of address what are we clinging to, what are we believing in, what's going on here, how can we move those to opinions? And you can still care about your opinions. You can still defend them. You can still think they're right. But if you're making the error, it's truly an error when you treat a belief like a truth, right? Even if it can be true, it's still an error because it's only true once you know it's true. And that's a different argument that we'll get into another time.
I can't wait to deep dive into truth. Yeah, but I think the takeaway here, or one of them, is there's a lot of beautiful things that happen when you share your opinions. So kind of to understand the difference between belief and truth and opinions, it's really key to kind of living a wonderful life. My example of opinion to belief to truth. So I don't eat seafood because I don't think you should eat things from the ocean. But I'm glad that everyone doesn't feel like that. That is an opinion that I have. It's my truth. It's not the truth that is for everyone.
Yeah. So wait, be careful with your words there. Can I invite you to do that? So
yeah.
So that's interesting because you go, that's my truth, right? That's an unchangeable kind of level. And you may want to keep it there, right? Like, and that's your right. Like you can do it. You're allowed to have your beliefs, right? I'm not suggesting you're not allowed to have your beliefs. But if you want to grow, right? Like what if there was a fish out there, and this might be hard. This is something, if it's charged, right? And I don't know how charged this is for you, but this is a great example because you go, it's my truth to not eat out of the ocean. If we're talking about change, look how unattractive it might be to you for me to even start talking about, well, wouldn't you want to try like, I don't know, like an octopus or like something that it's like immediately like, no, like our system really resists that change because we're short, because you said it's my truth. And you might know intellectually it's an opinion. You're happy that other people have different opinions, but the level to which it's true for you it's creeping into that belief space for you where you're like,
no, that's why this is a tricky conversation. That's why it's fun to pull it apart because that might not be the right word. That's definitely true to what I do.
Yes.
And it's definitely opinion. It is not an absolute truth. In fact, I love it watching people eat things from the ocean.
Yeah, but is it
if
possible,
you want to eat an octopus, that's great.
But is it possible that there's something out of the ocean? I mean, what about out of lakes? Do you mean out of bodies of water? Like what about rivers?
I don't do like seafood, fish.
No fish.
No
So it's not just ocean, it's just out of the water.
No shrimp. Yeah, if it's been in the water, if it lives in the water, no thank you.
So what if you just didn't know? And this is really interesting, and it's a great example too because it's very rando, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm not triggered. I hope we're not triggering any of you guys.
No, but you might be triggered if I was like asking you to eat seafood right now. If I was like, well, come on, like just challenge your opinion. Let's change. Let's do this, right? Like sometimes we can't see the value in that growing. And because it's got that protective status, it's like, Rob, like that's my reality. Like I'm not doing it. Right. And so when I'm telling people, like there's an obvious one, if you were to say to me like, Rob, I don't like myself. And I've sort of discovered that that's really my opinion about myself. And I think it's so deep that it might be a belief I have about myself. I could probably talk you into doing the work to challenging that because it would be obvious what the benefits are. But this is beliefs are around everything. That's why I wanted to start off with
Everything.
not just talking religion. This is literally about the meaning making of, like, you know, choosing to sit down in a chair. You don't even consider it, but you have to believe that it's going to hold you up, or you wouldn't just flop
You
into
wouldn't
it.
sit in it,
Right? We drive in the car because we believe that the brakes work, right? Like there's all kinds of things that are happening unconsciously based on assumptions and things we don't even consider. They're in our meaning making that are kind of happening outside reality. And this is one that's a tweener, right? You're very aware that it's there. You're very aware that it's different than a lot of other people. But if I asked you to change, which is what I'm really trying to talk about, would you be willing to, like, test that and blindfold yourself and eat different things and not know what it was? Or I don't know what that test would look like, but like,
I know, it's an interesting challenge, and
yeah,
I've spent a lot of my life living by oceans, so
yeah.
I often tell people, and they're like, "But have you tried it?" And I'm like, "Yes, I have tried it."
And it's okay if it's a no, but what I want to honor with that, I guess, is that the default for the human being is you are going to really, really, really want to defend your opinions. And that's only a fraction of what you're going to want to do with your beliefs. So this is why, more than anything else that comes to mind in this moment, and I would defend that you can go watch any TED talk on, like, this is the thing that's stopping you from changing. It's a lack of willpower, or you don't have your time management right, or whatever those things are. None of those hold a candle to the mechanism of belief in your meaning making system in your brain. And if you don't have the ability, and you don't have the desire, and you don't want to even look inward and change, then I hope you like yourself as you are. So in this example, if you like that about yourself, you don't have to change. I'm not suggesting you change.
Sure, yeah.
But where is that mechanism happening for you unconsciously, in places where you would love to change, but you would still defend that position in a similar way?
And can you notice it?
Can you notice it, right?
Can I notice that that's something that I like and that I'm comfortable with and that I've tested and I stick with? Or does that make me say, "Oh, I don't know. I've never been challenged." And sometimes not everyone gets the opportunity to have their beliefs challenged regularly, and I wouldn't wish upon someone who did, because that's also, but there's a middle ground there where I think it's important to just be open. And when you do get your opinions or your beliefs challenged, just be open and be able to kind of notice that we're calling it a mechanism, the switch, the flips, to keep it from becoming something that's so true, or doing what I did, putting vocabulary to, maybe you can use different vocabulary, just to keep yourself in check and keeping more as well-rounded as you possibly can be.
Yeah. And those ideas, I mean, there's a lot there that just might open up other talks that we could go into. I mean, many of us have kind of personality aspects or ways of being that might be more open than others, right? That's often why openness is a big driver of whether or not you consider yourself to be liberal, right? Closed or more fixed is a little bit more conservative, right? So these things map to political views very often and all that stuff. So just saying to somebody, be open, is a wonderful invitation. That might be easier for some people than others, right? Some people are just naturally way open. They like change. They want to try different stuff. The idea of never eating one kind of food would never occur to them. There's no way. Many of us are sort of in the middle, right? It's like, I'm kind of closed about some things. I'm really open about other things. We all have our kind of wiring. If you want to be different than you are, if you want to change, I'm telling you right now, whether you do it with a therapist, whether you do it with a friend, whether you do it with a coach, whether you come do it with us, you're going to have to change some of what you believe about what is real about yourself and about the world. And that is the only way to profoundly change some of the mechanism of literally who you are and what that drives for you to go forward. One thing, let's talk about how we talk to ourselves also, but these beliefs drive a narrative in our brain, right? For you, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but just to give the example that I'm thinking about, if I had that, I might quietly be saying to myself, without noticing sometimes, and maybe noticing sometimes, seafood is gross, right? Or like I don't mind watching you eat it, but like, I'm not eating it. That's gross. That's a fish that's got scales and gills and whatever. And so there's a narrative that gets down into this thing that just is sort of like leaned on, and it reinforces what you believe. It's almost like the icon in your mind that leads to all those.
That's so true. That's so true.
Is that it? I wonder, is it something like seafood is gross? Like, is that what you might say to
yourself? I'm not sure. I was just thinking that I have good friends that love to eat
Yeah.
They're super foodies, love all things seafood. And they just had a daughter who I spend a lot of time with. And they said, Sarah, we know you have a weird relationship with things from the ocean. We just ask that you put on the right face
Yeah.
around our daughter, because we don't want her to have biased preferences.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was like, huh. And it really made me like pause, because I'm like, oh, I didn't know I was wearing it so openly, or, you know, my story was so loud, because I feel very comfortable with it because it's my story.
Yeah.
But like to your point, like, yeah, that shows in other ways. And I thought did never think about it.
Well, it sure does. It sure does. And like your beliefs are going to change not only your behavior, but how you look, how you come across people, whether you roll your eyes unconsciously or not.
Right.
So somebody who's perceptive and can see those shifts, I could see, you know, if trout goes by, I could see, oh, you hate seafood, right? Like there's things we can pick up other people. Why I wanted to say that, maybe this is where we can kind of end, is that, you know, I might wake up one morning and kind of catch my brain, and it's subtle, almost like it could be close to a dream, but it could be going like, you know, today's going to be hard, or today's going to suck, or man, I don't like where I'm living, or, you know, you can hear these things. And just a little tip for everybody to try to begin to challenge a belief. Now, this isn't like the deep work of repatterning that we do. This isn't identity shifting. This isn't that, but just try to wake up. And when you catch yourself having a bad way, just go, I've got this, right? Just instead consciously say to yourself, you know, I've got this. I've been here before. This is going to go okay. This is no problem. And watch so much about yourself shift, because what your beliefs are doing underneath is they're giving you a certain narrative of truth about the world internally, right? Again, outside's real too. Sometimes people are saying things to you. Sometimes you'll find yourself in context or situations that are going to change who you are. But most of who you are is being driven by your internal patterns, your internal beliefs about yourself and the world. And they're making a narrative about everything. And step one would be to begin to change that narrative when you see it, right? If it's unconscious, you're not going to be able to see it. That's when you need to get with somebody and do deeper work on it. But when you can see it, see if you can consciously shift it. And a really cool one to lean on is, I've got this. This is going to go okay. I'll be all right. This is going to be all right. And watch, as soon as that happens, it's like you just get up out of bed. Like you're not, the resistance of the world isn't the same. You're like, I'm being dramatic. This is going to be fine. You know, whatever. Right. So
there's
I don't know
definitely a ripple effect when you do that. And so, yeah, it definitely give that a try and then
awesome.
see what's different.
So quick recap, right? This is the master key to personal change. If you can't affect what you believe to be true about yourself and about the world, you are stuck in what you are. And if that's true for you, I really hope you like you, and you're welcome to be you. And that's awesome. But if you want to be different, if you want to grow, if you want to change, if you want to get better skills, all that, you have to affect that belief mechanism in your mind in a profound way. We do that as a core component of the coaching work that we do. If you want to go further, you can certainly check into how we do that through both recoding your mind, through the identity shifting mastermind process. Incredible tools to do that. But you can start yourself by learning how to talk to yourself differently, learning how to become more open, seeing the beliefs that you have, seeing if you can challenge them and go, wait, maybe that's just an opinion, and start to notice that some of these are more malleable. One of the ways that I like to talk about this is you literally have to challenge truth as you understand it, which that's kind of in parentheses, because it's truly, you are going to believe these things to be correct. You're going to believe the I am loser statements or seafood is gross statements or whatever those are. Like those are real and right for you. And they may be the exact things that are holding you back. So the process of change is actually about challenging truth that you believe to be right. And when you can do that, then you actually have a shot at growth and change in a really profound way. So is that a cool place to wrap it up?
Yeah, that's awesome. And
Perfect.
if you want to know more about all of this, keep listening, because we have lots of things to say.
Yeah. You can also go to identityshifting.com or robscott.com. Awesome to be here with you guys. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks.